Hello and welcome to the second Mecha Mania devlog. In the last devlog, I was trying to talk about specific topics while reacting to the footage on screen. That ended up pulling me in two directions at once, commentary versus reaction, and neither really got the space it deserved. So from now on, I'll be recording the commentary first, then using gameplay footage to highlight what I'm talking about. Cleaner flow, clearer thoughts. So, what's new? A lot. So the first map has expanded significantly. I've added many new buildings, and unlike last time, they're fully integrated with colliders, damage feedback and destruction logic. Now instead of it feeling like incursions happen next to wherever you are, you have to travel to where they're taking place, which helps a lot for giving time to allow for healing and upgrades at the lift rig, since before it was quite hard to do without being constantly harassed by enemies. Now it's more like an optional pit stop between battles. I've added roads to the game and started to build out the road network with highways and substreets. These work as paths for sprint travel between incursion zones and will eventually be used to help AI navigate. I built out more of the backdrop of the first level, paired with an atmospheric fog to give a sense of distance and scale between these elements. I added digital billboards and highway signs that react to regional threats to make the city feel a bit more reactive and futuristic. It also doubles as a diegetic hint where to go. I created the alien supercarrier, the source of the invasion, and while it's more of a background object right now, it definitely isn't going to remain that way. It's pretty much going to be the final boss. Or is it? Added the first boss enemy to the game. It was originally called the alien drone carrier, since it spawns the kamikaze drone enemy type, but after experimenting with it, I turned them into something more like missiles. At first, it isn't that interested in the player. It has a very specific role, to destroy buildings and infrastructure with its big beam attack. However, when its health hits a certain point, it will turn its attention to the player, chasing and trying to beam the mech. While making this enemy, I added the energy shield panels and their logic, which also got used to add a hex shield layer to the main carrier ships that spawn procedural waves. I found that having a grid of shield tiles to be a bit unresponsive, so I'll probably unify them into a shader graph driven sort of single surface eventually. Added a new enemy unit called the Alien Charge Tank. It's big, bulky, and charges up an energy beam that fires at its enemies. Its attacks are telegraphed with a gradual glow up and ramp up sound. Since it's basically hit scan, I thought this would be necessary to allow for countering. I made a lot of changes to the dropper enemies. They became the most dangerous and annoying enemy because they're flying enemies that drop bombs that are supposed to be for damaging buildings. This was a problem because they could sneak above the mech while fighting ground enemies and suddenly cause huge damage. To adjust for this, I added a big glowing belly and made them project a scanning beam towards whatever they're targeting. Although I will admit it's a bit spammy. It's like, notice me. I added hover pads to the game, which are a nimble and fluid movement system exclusively for smaller mechs. Gave each movement system unique movement logic, with tank tracks using tank style controls, biped legs turning and strafing relative to look direction, and hover pads able to strafe directly sideways. Core rotation speed was increased to counteract movement-based interference. I originally wanted to have the core rotate more slowly to aim to give a sense of mechanical weight, but I found that this just wasn't fun. It just wasn't fun. Like, you want to be able to look at what you're shooting quite quickly, and instead of feeling weighty, it just felt janky. I completely rebuilt the UI and HUD, replacing all of the original Unity stock panels with unique ones, but it's still very much a work in progress. I'm planning to add some more visual flair to UI elements, so they feel like electronic displays rather than just static pictures. I condensed the Mech Builder UI panels into a single panel to make it easier to read, and because I think it looks better this way. I made it so the description box follows wherever the mouse is, again for readability. I also added highlight sounds and a little select mount point prompt that appears when mousing over a selectable mount. Added an orientation indicator and compass that allows you to see which way your movement body is facing relative to where you're aiming and looking. Added a lot of new sound effects to the game, a lot of things that didn't make sound that should have. Added sound effects to the UI. Started building the overall sound architecture of the game, pushing all sound sources into mixer groups, then push these mixer groups into settings that players can adjust. Optimized gameplay audio by implementing a priority by distance system that causes more distant sounds to get culled first. Gave all high fire rate weapons a looped variant of their audio to use in sustained fire to massively reduce one-shot calls. Made the sound of explosions and building collapses more interesting by adding frequency filtering based on distance from the player and randomizing their pitches. Made the OST player more contextual, set up a cue system for music changes based on dynamic cues. Standard, but it works. Added the field upgrades menu to the repair rig, which allows for upgrading base stats continuously and selectively per build. Plasma Spitter weapon added and fully implemented. It fires balls of superheated plasma at a relatively high rate, but the projectiles are slow moving compared to kinetic weapons, and the weapon overheats with sustained fire. However, as an energy weapon, these trade-offs might make it a decent alternative to the minigun when I add ammo mechanic. The ammo mechanic will also counter the cluster missile being quite so overpowered, since it can't be spammed endlessly. Anti-material rifle modelled. It will take a bit more work to implement this weapon, since it's basically a precision sniper weapon, and to work properly it needs enemies to have weak points to precision weapons, and that's a bigger overhaul than the weapon itself, but it's absolutely happening. Started creating archetype prefabs to save huge amounts of time when implementing new assets. This could be enemies, buildings, bosses, weapons, all sorts of things. It makes it so much easier. It sort of gives you an integrated foundation that then you can build on. I consolidated most of the controls into a unified input system. This allows for rebinding, as well as support for controllers and other control schemes. I've added bindings for gamepads, which works in core gameplay, but needs a bit more work to have it work in menus and UI. I plan to set up a parallel switching and activation system for utility parts, since I'm going to be adding many more of these that give counterplay options to different enemy types, as well as giving abilities that complement existing and upcoming weapons. The idea is for utilities to work as a sort of offhand abilities that you can cycle through, in the same way you can cycle through weapons. I'm going to add ammo mechanics to the game, as mentioned earlier, as well as magazine parts for the mech that increase capacity but add weight. Could possibly make them weak spots too, but that might be more frustrating than fun. We'll have to try it out and see how it plays. Going to keep building out the map, adding roads, adding more buildings and map features that I plan to have be part of the final boss fight. I'm going to add a mech launch animation to the mech builder that plays when pressing launch, to create a smooth transition between the building the mech and the lift sequence at the start of the first level. I plan to implement several new parts, some I've already mentioned. One that I haven't is the turret mount for parts, which allows for non-rotating cores to be able to aim and fulfill their role as a sort of static chassis. I'll probably start playing around with either a second boss type or a new wave enemy. More likely the boss. On top of that, I'll probably look at implementing the scaffolding of the Xmod or experimental modifier system. These are sort of automated functions and passive effects with parameters. For example, auto eject below 10% health, or auto pulse generator when enemies are X distance. The idea is that these parts are procedurally generated and can have stacked functions with different parameters, so you could get something useless like ejecting at below 90% health, or some stacked part with lots of useful functions that suit your build. Anyway, these are just a handful of things I might get done this month, but the full to-do list is immense, and if the last devlog's anything to go by, what actually ends up developing over the next month is fairly open-ended. I'm really enjoying the process, trying out ideas and seeing where they lead, in addition to seeing the larger reality of the game itself evolve and come together. I look forward to seeing where things are and where they're going in the next devlog, next month. To the watchers, thank thank you. Subscribe for updates. Well, really? Not so much now. And I don't even think the bell works that well these days. But, I don't know. I suppose you can check your liked videos if you like it. That's probably, honestly, the best way now. Or add it to a playlist or something.